Back in 1978, WKRP in Cincinnati turned radio DJs, clueless bosses, and non-stop studio chaos into one of television's funniest sitcoms. But while audiences were laughing, several cast members were battling depression, public humiliation, and heartbreaking tragedies that changed their lives forever. This is the cast then and now in 2026, and you won't recognize them today. Gary Sandy as Andy Travis. Andy Travis was the confident young program director with sharp suits, calm leadership, and constant battles to control the chaos inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on December 25, 1945, in Dayton, Ohio, Gary Sandy was 33 years old when he played Andy and quickly became the steady center of the wildly unpredictable radio station. The role gave Sandy the biggest success of his career and made him one of television's most recognizable faces at the end of the 1970s. By 2026, Gary Sandy is 80 years old and lives a far quieter life while occasionally appearing at theater events and cast reunions. After leaving Hollywood behind, he spent years returning to the stage through productions like The Pirates of Penzance and Arsenic and Old Lace, slowly rebuilding his career away from television fame. Yet stepping away from Hollywood never fully erased the emotional scars left behind by his sudden fall from stardom. After WKRP ended, Sandy struggled deeply with feeling trapped inside the image of Andy Travis, watching major opportunities slowly disappear as Hollywood refused to see him as anything else. The frustration became so overwhelming that he walked away from Los Angeles entirely, only to later suffer a serious stage accident during a theater performance that left him with lasting physical pain and emotional trauma. For years afterward, Sandy quietly carried the feeling that the industry had abandoned him almost as quickly as it once celebrated him. In many ways, his story became a painful reminder of how quickly television fame can disappear once the cameras stop rolling. Gordon Jump as Arthur Carlson. Arthur Carlson became unforgettable for his awkward smile, nervous energy, and hilarious disasters as the clueless station manager of WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on April 1, 1932 in Dayton, Ohio, Gordon Jump was 46 years old when he took on the role and transformed Carlson into one of television's most lovable comedy characters. His performance made him instantly recognizable across America and later helped him become widely known as the face of the famous Maytag repairman commercials. Sadly, Gordon Jump died on September 22, 2003, at the age of 71 after suffering from pulmonary fibrosis, a cruel lung disease that slowly destroyed his ability to breathe. During the final stage of his illness, respiratory failure gradually weakened him and forced him into an increasingly isolated life before his death. But long before his health collapsed, Jump had already endured years of emotional damage that quietly followed him behind the scenes. The biggest wound came in the late 1980s after his controversial appearance as a child abuser in Different Strokes, a role intended to warn families about abuse, but one that instead triggered public outrage and intense backlash against him personally. Viewers who once loved him as the harmless Arthur Carlson suddenly turned on him, and the humiliation reportedly pushed Jump into a deep depression that haunted him for years afterward. This experience left him emotionally exhausted and increasingly withdrawn from Hollywood. By the end of his life, the man who once made millions laugh was quietly battling loneliness, illness, and the painful feeling of being forgotten. Lonnie Anderson as Jennifer Marlowe. Jennifer Marlowe was remembered for her glamorous blonde hair, confident charm, and sharp intelligence that made her stand out in every episode of WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on August 5, 1945, in St. Paul, Minnesota, Lonnie Anderson was 33 years old when she played Jennifer and quickly became one of television's biggest sex symbols of the late 1970s. The role brought her worldwide fame and helped turn her into one of the most recognizable actresses on American television. By 2026, Lonnie Anderson is 81 years old and continues making occasional public appearances while living a far more private life away from Hollywood's spotlight. Despite years of personal and financial struggles, she remains admired for her television legacy and the elegance that once made her a cultural icon. However, the fame that transformed her career also brought years of emotional chaos that nearly destroyed her behind the scenes. The darkest chapter came during her explosive marriage and divorce from Burt Reynolds, one of Hollywood's most scandalous celebrity breakups of the 1990s. Their separation in 1994 turned into a brutal public war filled with accusations of infidelity, emotional abuse, and humiliation across the media, while the long financial battle reportedly left Anderson emotionally shattered and financially drained. The stress became so overwhelming that she later sought psychological treatment while battling severe depression and ongoing heart-related health problems. Even decades later, many fans still remember Lonnie Anderson not only for her beauty and fame, but for how painfully public her personal suffering became. Howard Hesseman as Dr. Johnny Fever. Dr. Johnny Fever became famous for his messy hair, sunglasses, raspy voice, and wild late-night radio energy inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on February 27, 1940 in Lebanon, Oregon, Howard Hesseman was 38 years old when he turned Johnny Fever into one of television's most iconic radio personalities. The role made Hesseman a cult favorite and earned him 2 Emmy nominations. Tragically, Howard Hesseman died on January 29, 2022, at the age of 81 after complications from colon surgery. Years of heavy smoking and substance abuse had already severely damaged his health long before his final illness, leaving his body increasingly fragile during his later years. Even after later success in Head of the Class, the image of Johnny Fever continued to dominate public memory and quietly followed him until the end of his life. That lingering image became both his greatest success and his deepest frustration. Hesseman had already developed a rebellious personality shaped by his parents' early divorce, and his real-life years as a DJ pushed him toward a dangerous lifestyle filled with drugs and instability. In 1969, his life nearly collapsed after he was arrested for selling cocaine, forcing him into painful rehabilitation while his career temporarily stalled. Although he eventually rebuilt his reputation, Hollywood never fully allowed him to escape the image of the burned-out DJ he played so perfectly. Howard Hesseman became a tragic example of an actor in Hollywood. Tim Reed as Venus Flytrap's smooth radio speeches, stylish suits, and calm late-night wisdom made Venus Flytrap one of the coolest personalities in WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on December 19, 1944 in Norfolk, Virginia, Tim Reed was 34 years old during the show's first season and gave the character an effortless confidence that audiences instantly loved. The success of WKRP later helped Reed build a respected career both in front of and behind the camera. By 2026, Tim Reed is 81 years old and continues working occasionally as a producer, speaker, and advocate for independent black filmmaking while living a quieter life away from mainstream Hollywood. Over the years, he built a respected career through projects like Sister, and the acclaimed series Frank's Place. Yet behind that success was a lifetime of battles that nearly broke him emotionally and physically. Growing up poor in segregated Virginia left Reed carrying painful memories of racism, and those experiences later fueled his fierce fights against discrimination inside Hollywood itself. He often clashed with studios and executives while demanding fair opportunities for black performers, earning both respect and resistance throughout the industry. Even so, Tim Reed refused to let fear or racism silence him, becoming one of the few actors of his generation willing to openly challenge the system that tried to limit him. Carol Bruce as Lillian Carlson. Audiences knew Lillian Carlson for her warm personality and comforting presence during her appearances in WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on November 15, 1919 in New York City, Carol Bruce was 59 years old when she joined the series and brought quiet charm and motherly warmth to the Carlson family scenes. Her television work added another chapter to a long Broadway career that had already earned deep respect in the theater world. Sadly, Carol Bruce died on October 9, 2007, at the age of 87 after years of suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease caused by decades of heavy smoking. Her health deteriorated severely during the final years of her life, eventually forcing her into a nursing home for performers where she spent her last days in declining condition. Even after decades in entertainment, Bruce's later years became painfully quiet and isolated. Behind the stage lights, Bruce carried emotional wounds that never truly healed. Her bitter divorce from a music director left her raising her daughter Julie alone while struggling to survive emotionally and financially inside show business. The deepest heartbreak came during the 1980s when a vicious property dispute destroyed her relationship with her daughter completely, leaving the two permanently estranged. As illness slowly weakened her body, Carol Bruce reportedly spent much of her final years living in overwhelming loneliness, far away from the applause that once defined her life. Jan Smithers as Bailey Quarters. Viewers still remember the soft-spoken Bailey Quarters for her shy smile, gentle charm, and awkward sweetness inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on July 3, 1949, in North Hollywood, California, Jan Smithers was 29 years old when she appeared on the series and slowly turned Bailey into one of the sitcom's most relatable characters. Her natural warmth made her especially popular during WKRP's successful television run. By 2026, Jan Smithers is 76 years old and lives a deeply private life far away from Hollywood while focusing on family, personal peace, and staying out of the public spotlight. Although she once appeared in projects like The Love Boat and famously appeared on the cover of Newsweek as a teenager, she eventually chose to walk away from fame almost completely. But behind her gentle image, Smithers struggled for years with deep insecurity caused by a traumatic car accident during her youth. After swerving to avoid another vehicle, she suffered serious facial injuries that left a large scar on her chin and reportedly shattered her confidence about her appearance. The emotional impact of the accident stayed with her long afterward, contributing to her increasingly withdrawn personality and fear of Hollywood's constant judgment. Even as fame surrounded her during WKRP, Jan Smithers quietly longed for a calmer life away from cameras and public pressure. In the end, she chose peace and privacy over celebrity, something very few television stars ever managed to do. Alan Ann McClary as Carmen Carlson. Graceful dancing, elegant charm, and a calm maternal presence made Carmen Carlson quietly memorable in WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on December 1, 1926, in Grand-Mère, Quebec, Alan Ann McClary was 52 years old when she appeared on the series and brought warmth and sophistication to the Carlson family. Her performance reflected the same natural elegance that had followed her throughout decades of work in film, theater, and music. Sadly, Alan Ann McClary died on May 21, 2018, at the age of 91 after suffering complications from Alzheimer's disease during the final years of her life. Following the death of her husband George Gaines 2 years earlier, her condition reportedly worsened as memory loss slowly consumed her remaining independence. Her passing quietly closed the career of a performer who had spent decades bringing energy and grace to both stage and screen. Yet the greatest tragedy of McClary's life came long before illness entered the picture. The death of her only son Matthew from AIDS-related complications devastated both her and George Gaines emotionally, leaving a grief so overwhelming that she reportedly lost much of her passion for Hollywood afterward. The heartbreak pushed the couple away from the entertainment world and into a far more isolated life in rural Washington, where McClary spent years quietly carrying the pain of losing her child. By the end of her life, Alzheimer's had taken many of her memories, but the sorrow surrounding her family tragedy never truly disappeared. Sam Anderson as Mason Noble / Rex Earhart. The familiar background employee, businessman, and radio station regulars scattered throughout WKRP in Cincinnati were often portrayed by the dependable face of Sam Anderson. Born on May 13, 1945, in Wahpeton, North Dakota, Anderson was 33 years old during his appearances on the series and quietly became one of television's most recognizable character actors. His calm and natural acting style later helped him build a long career across both film and television. By 2026, Sam Anderson is 81 years old and continues living a relatively private life while occasionally appearing at fan conventions and television events. Married to Barbara Anderson since 1985, he built a stable family life while raising their twin children far away from Hollywood scandal and media chaos. Even with decades of steady acting work, however, Anderson's early years in Los Angeles were far more difficult than audiences ever realized. That quiet stability came only after years of feeling invisible inside Hollywood. While audiences constantly recognized his face, Anderson reportedly struggled deeply with the humiliation of never fully breaking past supporting roles, creating financial stress and painful doubts about his own talent. Watching other actors become stars while he remained in the background slowly damaged his confidence during the hardest years of his career. Still, instead of walking away bitter or defeated, Sam Anderson survived through patience, discipline, and the acceptance that not every successful actor becomes a celebrity. Ian Wolfe, as Hirsch. An elderly man with thin glasses, a fragile voice, and quiet intelligence helped Hirsch stand out during his brief moments in WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on November 4, 1896 in Canton, Illinois, Ian Wolfe was already 85 years old when he appeared on the series, carrying the legacy of more than 400 acting credits across 7 decades. Few performers in Hollywood history managed to sustain a career as long as his. Sadly, Ian Wolfe died on January 23, 1992, at the age of 95 after years of declining health during the final chapter of his extraordinary life. Although he had spent nearly 68 years married to his wife, Elizabeth Schroeder, his later years reportedly became increasingly isolated as serious inheritance and property disputes created painful divisions within the family. By the time of his death, Wolfe was living quietly surrounded by books and memories inside his home, far removed from the Hollywood world that once celebrated him. As his health weakened, the collapse of his family relationships reportedly became even more emotionally devastating. Bitter arguments over inheritance slowly pushed relatives away one by one, leaving Wolfe trapped in overwhelming loneliness during the final years of his life. Friends later described a man surrounded not by family, but by silence, old books, and memories of a career that once filled his life with purpose. For someone who spent over 70 years entertaining audiences, Ian Wolfe's final days became heartbreakingly empty and isolated. George Weiner as D. Arnold Gonzer. The moment D. Arnold Gonzer walked into the room, his cold stare and sharp delivery instantly made everyone seem nervous in WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on October 20, 1945, in Boston, Massachusetts, George Weiner was 35 years old during his appearances on the show and became known for portraying intelligent authority figures with remarkable consistency. His recognizable screen presence later helped him secure memorable roles in productions like Spaceballs and Hill Street Blues. By 2026, George Weiner is 81 years old and continues living a quiet life with his wife Kathleen Weiner after more than 5 decades of marriage together. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, he built a long and respected career through steady television work while avoiding the scandals and chaos that surrounded many Hollywood actors of his generation. Still, the stability of his personal life could not completely erase the professional frustration that followed him for decades. Because of his stern appearance and authoritative voice, Weiner reportedly spent years trapped inside the same repetitive roles: lawyers, judges, doctors, and government officials, while more emotionally complex opportunities repeatedly passed him by. Although directors constantly hired him, Hollywood rarely allowed him to show a different side of his talent, creating a quiet disappointment that stayed with him throughout much of his career. Unlike actors destroyed publicly by scandal or addiction, George Weiner's struggle was more personal, spending a lifetime respected by the industry while never fully escaping the box it placed him in. Hamilton Camp as Del Murdoch. Whenever Del Murdoch appeared on screen, chaos usually followed with loud commercials, frantic shouting, and absurd appliance sales inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on October 30th, 1934, in London, England, Hamilton Camp was 44 years old during his time on the series and brought wild comedic energy to the station's advertisements. His eccentric personality later became familiar to audiences through voice acting, comedy performances, and folk music. Tragically, Hamilton Camp died suddenly from a heart attack on October 2, 2005, at the age of 70. By the time of his death, he had built an estimated net worth of around $1 million through decades of acting, voice work, comedy, and music performances. The loss shocked many longtime fans because Camp had remained active professionally almost until the final years of his life. But behind the humor and endless energy, Camp quietly carried emotional scars dating back to childhood. Surviving the terrifying Blitz bombings during World War II reportedly left him with lingering anxiety and emotional instability that followed him throughout adulthood after his family escaped to America. Then, after the death of his wife, Luann Camp, in 2002, friends said he emotionally collapsed under the weight of grief after more than 4 decades together and 6 children raised as a family. By the end of his life, the comedian known for making people laugh was privately struggling with loneliness, heartbreak, and declining health. Rosemary Forsythe as Joyce Armour. Every scene between Joyce Armour and Andy Travis carried sharp tension, unresolved romance, and quiet rivalry inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on July 6, 1943 in Montreal, Canada, Rosemary Forsythe was 38 years old when she brought sophistication and emotional intensity to the character. Her television work added another chapter to a career that had already made her one of Hollywood's rising actresses during the 1960s. By 2026, Rosemary Forsythe is 82 years old and lives a far quieter life away from the Hollywood spotlight after decades in film and television. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, she managed to maintain financial stability despite the dramatic career decline many actresses of her generation experienced as the industry changed around them. Yet the emotional cost of watching her fame slowly disappear proved much harder to overcome. As Hollywood shifted away from the glamorous leading ladies of the 1960s, Forsythe reportedly struggled deeply with the painful transition from major film roles to smaller television guest appearances simply to maintain steady income. The loss of status and visibility pushed her into periods of depression and professional self-doubt. At the same time, cruel tabloid rumors about aging and cosmetic surgery followed her throughout middle age, forcing her to quietly endure public judgment while refusing to defend herself publicly. Rosemary Forsythe became one of many classic Hollywood actresses. Edie McClurg as Lucille Tarleck. Lucille Tarleck often appeared with a nervous smile, gentle voice, and endless patience whenever Herb Tarleck created chaos inside WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on July 23, 1945, in Kansas City, Missouri, Edie McClurg was in her early 30s during her recurring appearances on the show and became known for her instantly recognizable comedic style. Her warm screen presence later helped her build a huge career across sitcoms, comedy films, commercials, and beloved animated movies. By 2026, Edie McClurg is 81 years old and lives under conservatorship care after serious health struggles forced her away from public life. After decades of work in projects like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Little Mermaid, and Wreck-It Ralph, she earned an estimated net worth of around $6 million through acting, voice work, commercials, and television appearances. However, her later years became increasingly tragic as dementia slowly robbed her of independence and left her vulnerable to exploitation. As her condition worsened, court documents revealed deeply disturbing allegations involving a man who reportedly moved into her home, became her caregiver, and was later accused of sexually abusing and manipulating her while she suffered from cognitive decline. The case shocked many fans because McClurg had spent her career portraying lovable, harmless characters associated with comfort and laughter. Friends and family eventually stepped in to protect her through legal conservatorship after concerns grew about her safety and judgment. In the end, the woman who spent decades making audiences smile entered her final years surrounded not by Hollywood glamour, but by heartbreaking battles over dignity, protection, and trust. Mary Fran as Avis Dropkin. Avis Dropkin was the elegant and sophisticated woman whose confident personality brought extra tension and charm to the chaotic world of WKRP in Cincinnati. Born on February 27, 1943 in St. Louis, Missouri, Mary Fran was 36 years old during her appearance on the series and already carried the polished image of a rising television star. Her graceful screen presence later helped make her unforgettable as Joanna Loudon on Newhart, the role that defined her career. Sadly, Mary Fran died suddenly in her sleep from a heart attack on September 23, 1998, at the age of 55 inside her Beverly Hills home. Doctors later discovered signs of earlier undiagnosed heart damage, revealing that her health problems had quietly developed long before her sudden death shocked friends and fans. She was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California, after a career that had made her one of television's most recognizable sitcom actresses of the 1980s. Despite her glamorous image on screen, Fran privately struggled with emotional disappointment and the pressure of constantly reinventing herself in Hollywood. Her marriage to T.J. Escott collapsed in divorce after years of separation, leaving her increasingly focused on work while quietly carrying loneliness behind the scenes. At the same time, she reportedly became frustrated with being viewed only as the sweet sitcom wife from Newhart and fought hard to prove she could handle darker and more dramatic roles. After all, Mary Fran spent much of her life trying to appear cheerful and composed in public while privately fearing that Hollywood would eventually forget her. So that was the cast of WKRP in Cincinnati then and now. And behind the laughter, crazy radio station chaos, and unforgettable comedy were lives filled with heartbreak, illness, loneliness, and painful personal struggles that fans never saw on screen. Which cast member's story shocked you the most after all these years? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible then and now stories from classic television legends.